They tell you that in the modern age, war is clean. They tell you it's fought with drones, algorithms, and silent keystrokes in air-conditioned rooms thousands of miles from the mud. They lie. War has always been intimate. It has always been about looking someone in the eye and deciding who gets to go home. But now, the trigger isn't a finger on a hammer. It's a line of code. And sometimes the person holding the gun doesn't even know they're pulling it until the blood is already on their hands. This isn't a story about heroes saving the world. It's about 3 soldiers trapped in a basement in Kyiv, trying to figure out if the order they just received is a mission or a murder warrant. If you've ever wondered what happens when duty conflicts with conscience, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you'll realize that the most dangerous weapon in any army isn't the rifle. It's the blind obedience we're trained to respect. The rain in Kyiv doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. It was a cold, needle-thin drizzle that found its way through the seams of my tactical jacket, settling into the bone-deep chill that had taken up residence in my marrow 3 weeks ago. I sat on an overturned crate of ammunition, the wood damp and rotting, watching the condensation drip from the exposed rebar of the ceiling. We were in the sub-basement of what used to be a university library, now repurposed as a forward operating node for the 4th Cyber Infantry Battalion. The air smelled of wet concrete, ozone, and the distinct metallic tang of fierce sweat that never quite leaves a room where people are waiting to die. "Check your pulse, Elias," Miller said. He didn't look up from his terminal. His fingers were flying across a mechanical keyboard that sounded like hail hitting a tin roof. Miller was our tech specialist, a kid from Ohio who looked like he should be delivering pizzas, not hacking into secured military servers. He wore his hair in a messy bun, held together by a pencil, and had a habit of humming 80s pop songs when he was stressed. Right now, he was humming Take On Me, off-key, and frantic. "My pulse is fine, Miller," I said, my voice rough from lack of sleep. "Stop trying to diagnose me, and finish the encryption handshake. Command wants that data packet sealed and sent within the hour. Jax, our heavy weapons specialist, and the only reason we were still alive after the ambush on Tuesday, leaned against the far wall. He was cleaning his rifle, a ritualistic, meditative process that involved more care than most people gave their children. Jax was a mountain of a man, quiet, with eyes that seemed to have seen too much, and decided to stop reacting to it. "Elias is right," Jax rumbled, his voice a low gravel. "If we don't get this uplink stable, we're sitting ducks. The Russians know we're here. They've been probing the perimeter sensors for 20 minutes. I stood up, my knees popping. I was the team leader, Sergeant Elias Thorne. 32 years old, 10 years in the service, and enough scars to map out every mistake I'd ever made. My job wasn't just to shoot. It was to keep Miller from having a panic attack and Jax from going lone wolf. It was to make sure that when the order came, we executed it without hesitation. That was the training. That was the doctrine. Trust the chain. Trust the data. Status on the perimeter? I asked, walking over to the main monitor array. The screens glowed with a sickly green light, displaying thermal feeds from the cameras we'd rigged around the building's exterior. "Quiet. Too quiet," Jax said, snapping the bolt of his rifle back into place. "They're waiting for something. Or someone. Maybe they're waiting for us to screw up," Miller muttered, finally hitting the enter key with a flourish. And boom. Handshake complete. Data packet Project Ethelgard is locked, encrypted, and ready for transmission to High Command. All I need is the final authorization code from you, boss. I pulled my datapad from my vest. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the display, but the text was clear. The order had come in 10 minutes ago, marked urgent, priority alpha. It was a standard data extraction protocol. We had intercepted a cache of enemy communications from a downed drone earlier that day. Command wanted it verified, packaged, and sent back to HQ for analysis. Simple, routine, boring even, but something felt wrong. It was an itch at the base of my skull, the same feeling I got before an IED went off or a sniper took a shot. I looked at the file name again. Project Ethelgard. I never heard of it. And the size of the file was massive, terabytes of data. Why would a single drone carry that much? "Miller," I said, frowning. "What's in this packet? You decrypted the header, right?" Miller shrugged, spinning his chair around. "Standard comms logs, geolocation data, some biometric scans. Nothing weird. Just a lot of it. Why? You getting sentimental about binary code?" "No," I said, tapping the screen. It's the destination. It's not going to Central Command in Brussels. It's routed through a black site server in the Urals. That's not our side, Miller. The room went silent. Even the hum of the servers seemed to drop an octave. Jax stopped cleaning his rifle. Miller's face went pale, the color draining out of him so fast I thought he might faint. The Urals? Miller whispered. That's Russian territory. That's a hostile node. If we send this there, we're feeding them everything. Our positions, our encryption keys, our entire network topology. Maybe it's a trap, Jack said, standing up. He moved with a predatory grace, coming to stand behind me. Maybe Command is testing us, seeing if we'll spot the error. Or maybe Command has been compromised, I said, the thought chilling my blood. Or maybe this isn't a mistake. Maybe this is a trade. I looked at the two men who depended on me. Miller, who had a fiancée back in Dayton who sent him care packages full of cookies he never ate because he was too nervous to digest them. Jax, who carried a photo of his daughter in his helmet, a girl he hadn't seen in 2 years because he kept re-enlisting to pay for her medical bills. If I sent this data, and it was what I thought it was, we weren't just betraying our country. We were signing our own death warrants, and probably thousands of others. We can't send it, Miller said, his voice trembling. Elias, if I hit that transmit button, I'm a traitor. I'm done. My life is done. If we don't send it, Jax said calmly, we're insubordinate. And if Command thinks we're holding out, they'll send a cleanup crew. Or they'll remote detonate the charges they planted in the Foundation when we set up shop. Did you forget about the fail-safes, Sergeant? I hadn't forgotten. Every forward operating base had explosive charges rigged to destroy sensitive equipment in case of capture. We had installed them ourselves. If we went rogue, Command could blow this building into rubble with a single signal. We need to know what's in the file, I said. Miller, can you open it? Without triggering the send protocol? Miller bit his lip, his eyes darting between me and the screen. It's triple encrypted. Military grade. If I try to brute force it, the system will detect the intrusion and auto-send. It's a dead man switch. The moment I touch the core data, it launches. Then, we don't touch the core, I said, my mind racing. We look at the metadata. The wrapper. What's the source ID? Miller typed furiously. Source ID is wait. That's not a drone ID. That's a civilian hospital network. St. Jude's Pediatric Oncology Wing. In Kharkiv. The air left my lungs. St. Jude's. We had passed on the way in. It was a shell of a building, bombed out months ago. But the network? Why would a hospital network be transmitting terabytes of data to a Russian black site? It's not comms logs. I realized, horror dawning on me. It's patient records, biometric data, genetic profiles. Why would they want that? Jax asked, his brow furrowed. Bioweapons, Miller whispered, tears welling in his eyes. Targeted viruses. They're building a database to create pathogens that only affect specific genetic markers. Ethnic cleansing, Elias. Digitized. The moral weight of it crushed down on me. This wasn't just data. It was a hit list, a blueprint for genocide. And I was being ordered to deliver it. Who sent the order? I asked, my voice hardening. Miller checked the signature. General Vance. Your direct superior. Vance. The man who had pinned my medals on my chest. The man who had drunk whiskey with me after my first kill. The man who was supposed to be the shield of democracy. He knows, I said. He knows exactly what this is, and he's telling us to send it. So what do we do? Jax asked. He wasn't asking for permission. He was asking for a plan. I looked at the timer on the screen. Transmission window closes in 15 minutes. If we didn't send it, the system would flag us as non-compliant. The fail-safes would arm. We don't send it, I said. And we don't stay here. Miller, can you spoof the transmission? Make it look like we sent it, but route it to a null server? A black hole. Miller shook his head. No, the verification hash won't match. They'll know within seconds. It has to be the real data, or it has to be nothing. Then we destroy it, Jack said, and trigger the explosives. I countered. We die, the data is gone, but Vance wins. He gets to paint us as traitors who destroyed vital intel. He covers his tracks. There had to be another way. There was always another way. That's what leadership was. Not just giving orders, but finding the path through the impossible. Miller, I said, grabbing his shoulder. How long do you need to copy the data to a local drive? A physical drive? 2 minutes. But why? If we take it, we're stealing classified material. That's court-martial. Life in prison. Better than life in a grave, I said, and better than being a murderer. Copy it. Then, I want you to inject a virus into the transmission protocol. Not to stop it, but to corrupt the header. Make it look like the data is damaged, unreadable. Garbage. They'll see that, Miller said. Not if we mix it with noise, I said. Flood the channel with static. Make it look like interference from a storm. Buy us time. While they're trying to decode the garbage, we move. Move where? Jax asked. To the source, I said. If this data came from St. Jude's, there might be a backup. Or a witness. Someone who knows why Vance is doing this. We need proof. Real, undeniable proof that we can take to the press, to the international court, to anyone who will listen. We can't fight this from inside the chain of command. The chain is broken. Miller hesitated, then nodded. His hands flew across the keyboard. Copying now. Injecting corruption algorithm done. Transmission starting in 3, tune. The screen flashed red. Sending. Then, error. Data corrupted. Retrying. They're buying it, Miller said, exhaling sharply. For now. But they'll send a team to fix it. Or to fix us. Grab your gear, I ordered. We have 5 minutes before they realize we're not just incompetent, we're gone. Jax, blow the secondary exit. The sewer line. It's filthy, but it's unmonitored. Jax nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. I love a good swim. As we packed our bags, the weight of what we were doing settled on me. We were no longer soldiers. We were fugitives. We were hunting our own general. And the only thing we had was a hard drive full of secrets and a bond of brotherhood that was about to be tested by fire. I looked at Miller, who was shoving cookies into his pocket, his comfort food for the road. I looked at Jax, who was checking his ammo count with practiced efficiency. I felt a surge of pride, mixed with terror. We were doing the right thing. But in war, the right thing is often the deadliest. Let's move, I said. We slipped into the darkness of the sewer tunnel, leaving the glowing screens behind. The rain above was still falling, washing nothing clean, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. We were off the leash, and God help anyone who tried to put us back on. These sewers of Kiev are a labyrinth of history and decay. The air was thick with the smell of methane and stagnant water, a cloying scent that coated the back of my throat. We waded through knee-deep sludge, our night vision goggles painting the world in shades of eerie green. The only sound was the squelch of our boots and the distant, muffled rumble of artillery above ground. It felt like we were moving through the intestines of a dying beast. Remind me again why we chose the scenic route. Miller wheezed, slipping on a patch of algae. Jax caught him by the harness before he face-planted into the muck. Because the front door has a drone swarm waiting for us, I whispered, keeping my voice low. Sound travels in tunnels. Keep your head down and your mouth shut. We need to reach the surface near the old quarter. From there, it's 2 clicks to the hospital ruins. Jax took point, his rifle raised, scanning the shadows ahead. He moved with a silence that defied his size. Thermal signatures ahead, he murmured over the comms. 200 meters. Humanoid. Stationary. Ambush. Miller asked, his voice rising in pitch. Possible, I said. Or just rats. Big rats. Stay alert. We crept forward, the tension coiling in my stomach like a spring. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every drip of water sounded like a footstep. This was the part of warfare they didn't show in the recruitment videos. The waiting. The uncertainty. The constant, gnawing fear that you're already dead and just haven't noticed yet. When we reached the ladder leading up to a manhole cover, Jax signaled for a halt. He placed his ear against the metal, listening. After a long minute, he shook his head. Clear. But I hear engines. Close by. Patrol, I said. We wait. We huddled in the darkness, the cold water seeping through our fatigues. Miller was shivering, not just from the cold, but from the adrenaline crash. I reached out and squeezed his shoulder. Hey, I whispered. You did good back there. That hack was brilliant. Miller managed a weak smile. I just hope it holds. If Vance figures out we spoofed the header, he'll track the IP bounce. We have maybe an hour before they triangulate our position. An hour is enough, I said. We get to the hospital, find the source, and get out. Then we figure out the next step. What is the next step? Jax asked, his voice devoid of emotion. We can't go back to base. We can't go home. We're ghosts, Elias. We're witnesses, I corrected him. And witnesses have power. If we can prove Vance is selling out our own people or facilitating this eugenics project, we could bring him down. We can stop it. And if we can't? Miller asked. Then we die trying, I said. It wasn't a heroic statement. It was a fact. Jax pushed the manhole cover up, just enough to peek through. He slid back down. Street is clear. But there's a checkpoint half a block east. Russian infantry. They're stopping cars. We go around, I said, through the buildings. We climbed out into the night. The city was a skeleton of its former self. Buildings stood like jagged teeth against the sky, their windows blown out, their facades scarred by shrapnel. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting the world in a gloomy twilight. We moved through the ruins, sticking to the shadows, using the debris as cover. As we approached the hospital, the scale of the destruction became apparent. St. Jude's was a crater. The main wing had collapsed, burying whatever secrets lay beneath tons of concrete and steel. It's gone, Miller said, his voice hollow. The server room was in the basement. It's buried. Then we dig, Jack said. We don't have time, I said. And we don't have equipment. We need another angle. Miller, think. Where else would they store backup? Hospitals have redundancy systems. Off-site backups. Miller tapped his datapad, accessing the hospital's public architectural plans. There's a secondary data center, 3 blocks north. An old bank vault converted for secure medical storage. It's hardened against EMPs and bombings. Lead the way, I said. We moved quickly, the urgency driving us. But as we turned the corner onto the street leading to the bank, headlights swept across us. Down, I shouted, diving behind a burnout car. A armored personnel carrier rolled past, its turret swiveling. Soldiers jumped out, fanning out. They weren't looking for us specifically. They were sweeping the area. But they were close. Too close. They're setting up a perimeter, Jax whispered. They know we're in this sector. Ow! Miller panicked. Did I leave a trace? No, I said. Vance. He predicted we'd come here. He knew we'd try to find the source. He's hurting us. It was a trap. A classic pincer movement. Force us into a confined space, then box us in. We can't go to the bank, I said. It's compromised. Then where? Jax asked. I looked around, my mind racing. The hospital was destroyed. The bank was a trap. We were running out of options. Then I saw it. The church. St. Michael's. It stood intact, mostly on a hill overlooking the district. And more importantly, it had a bell tower, a high vantage point, and beneath it the catacombs, ancient tunnels that predated the city's modern sewage system. The church, I said. We go underground, through the catacombs. They lead to the riverbank. We can escape via boat. Boat? Miller asked. Do we have a boat? No, I said, but we can steal one, or commandeer one. Let's move. We sprinted across the open street, bullets kicking up dust around our feet. The soldiers had spotted us. Shouts erupted in Russian. Gunfire cracked through the air, sharp and deadly. Jax returned fire, his shots precise and controlled, dropping 2 soldiers before we reached the church doors. We burst into the sanctuary, the smell of incense and old stone replacing the stench of war. It was surreal. The stained glass was shattered, but the altar remained, a symbol of peace in a house of violence. Downstairs, I ordered. We found the entrance to the catacombs behind a loose stone in the crypt. It was narrow, dark, and terrifying, but it was our only way out. As we descended, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the dripping of water and the beating of our own hearts. We were safe for the moment, but we were also trapped. In the darkness of the catacombs, Miller's datapad lit up. A message, encrypted, from an unknown sender. I took the pad. The message was short. I know what you have. I know what Vance is doing. Meet me at the Dnipro Bridge. Midnight. Come alone. Miller asked. Who is V? I don't know, I said. But it's the first break we've had. It could be a trap, Jax said. It's always a trap, I said. But it's the only lead we have. We go to the bridge. But the message says come alone, Miller pointed out. I'm not leaving you too, I said firmly. We stick together. Always. If it's a trap, we face it together. If it's real, we have backup. Jax nodded. Miller swallowed hard but nodded too. We emerged from the catacombs near the riverbank. The Dnipro River flowed black and oily under the moonlight. The bridge loomed ahead, a skeletal structure of steel and concrete partially destroyed but still passable for pedestrians. We waited in the shadows of a ruined pier. The clock on my watch ticked toward midnight. 11:55, 11:58, 11:59. At midnight, a figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Tall, wearing a long coat, face obscured by a hood. "Elias Thorne," the figure said. The voice was female, smooth, confident. "Who are you?" I asked, stepping forward, my hand on my pistol. "My name is Irina," she said. "I was the lead architect of Project Ethelgard." Before I realized what it was, she lowered her hood. She was young, maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that held a deep, haunting sorrow. "I didn't build it to kill," she said. "I built it to cure, to identify genetic predispositions to disease." But Vance, he saw a weapon. He stole the code. He sold it to the highest bidder. And when I tried to stop him, he framed me. He made it look like I was the traitor. "Why tell us this now?" I asked. "Because you're the only ones who didn't send the data," she said. "And because I have the decryption key, the real one, the one that unlocks the evidence of Vance's transactions, the money trails, the emails, everything." She held up a small USB drive. "But there's a catch," she said. "Vance has a team closing in. They know I'm here. They know you're here. We have 10 minutes before this bridge becomes a kill zone." 10 minutes to do what? Jax asked. "To get this drive to the press," Irina said. "There's a journalist camped out on the other side of the river. Independent. Unbiased. If you get this to him, the story breaks tomorrow morning. Vance is finished. And if we fail," Miller asked, "then we all die," Irina said simply. "And the project continues." I looked at the drive. It was small, insignificant, but it held the power to change everything. "Let's go," I said. We ran onto the bridge. The wind howled, whipping our coats around us. Halfway across, headlights blinded us. Two vehicles screeched to a halt, blocking our path. Soldiers poured out. "Contact front," Jack shouted, opening fire. Bullets sparked off the metal railings. We dove for cover behind the wrecked cars that littered the bridge. Irina stayed low, clutching the drive. "We can't fight them all," Miller yelled over the gunfire. "There's too many." "I have an idea," I said. "Jack's suppressive fire. Miller, hack the bridge controls." "The bridge controls?" Miller looked at me like I was crazy. "This is an old bridge. The controls are manual." "Not the lifting mechanism," I said. "The lighting. The emergency systems. Create a distraction." Miller scrambled to a junction box on the side of the bridge. Jax laid down a barrage of fire, keeping the soldiers' heads down. I covered Irina, shooting at any soldier who tried to flank us. "Got it," Miller shouted. Suddenly, the bridge lights exploded in a shower of sparks. Darkness fell, absolute and total. Then, the emergency sirens began to wail, a deafening roar that echoed off the water. "Now," I yelled. "Run." We sprinted through the chaos, the soldiers disoriented by the sudden blackout and noise. We reached the other side, gasping for breath, and collided with a group of civilians. Among them was a man with a camera. "The drive," I said, handing it to Irina. She passed it to the journalist. "Get out," she said. "Please." The journalist nodded, his eyes wide with fear and determination. He ran into the shadows. Behind us, the soldiers were regrouping. Flashlights cut through the dark. "We have to go," Jack said. "Now." We disappeared into the maze of the city, leaving the bridge behind. We had done it. We had passed the torch. But the hunt was far from over. Vance would not stop. And now we were the most wanted men and woman in the country. The days that followed were a blur of motion and paranoia. We moved every few hours, sleeping in abandoned apartments, basements, and once in the back of a delivery truck. We were ghosts, haunting the edges of the city, waiting for the news to break. Miller monitored the networks constantly, his fingers raw from typing. Jax kept watch, his eyes never resting. Irina stayed with us, her presence a constant reminder of what we were fighting for. She wasn't a soldier, but she had a resilience that surprised me. She tended to our wounds, shared her rations, and kept our spirits up with stories of her life before the war. On the third day, the story broke. It started on social media. A trickle of posts, then a flood. Hashtag Project Ethelgard. Hashtag General Vance Traitor. Hashtag Genocide Code. Major news outlets picked it up. The evidence was irrefutable. The emails, the bank transfers, the genetic maps. The world was shocked, outraged. Protests erupted in capitals across the globe. Sanctions were threatened. Investigations launched. We watched it from a cramped attic in the Pottle district. Miller was crying, tears of relief streaming down his face. Jax let out a long, slow breath, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. Irina hugged me, her body shaking. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." But I couldn't celebrate. Not yet. Vance was still out there. And men like Vance don't go down without taking someone with them. "He'll run," I said. "He'll try to escape. We need to make sure he doesn't." "Ow," Jax asked. "We're not cops. We're not assassins." "No," I said. "But we know him. We know his patterns. He has a safe house. A bunker. Outside the city. In the forests." "How do you know?" Miller asked. "Because I helped build it," I said. 5 years ago. For contingency planning. Only a handful of people know the location. Vance is one of them. "Then we go there," Jax said. "We end this." "It's suicide," Miller said. "It's a fortress." "It's our duty," I said. "We started this. We finish it." We prepared for the final mission. We gathered what weapons we had left. We mapped the route. We said our goodbyes, just in case. The journey to the bunker was tense. The forest was dense, the trees looming like giants. Snow had begun to fall, covering our tracks, but also making movement difficult. We approached the bunker at dawn. It was hidden beneath a rocky outcrop, camouflaged to blend in with the natural terrain. Jax disabled the external sensors. Miller hacked the electronic lock. I kicked the door in. Inside, the bunker was luxurious. Warm, well-lit, stocked with food and wine. And sitting at a desk, packing a bag, was General Vance. He looked up, unsurprised. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just smiled. A cold, calculating smile. "Elias," he said, "I wondered if you'd come." "It's over, Vance," I said, aiming my rifle at his chest. "The world knows." "The world is noisy," Vance said, standing up. "And forgetful. By next week, there will be a new scandal. A new crisis. And I will be a martyr. A victim of cyber warfare. My narrative is already written." "You're a monster," Irina spat, stepping forward. "I'm a pragmatist," Vance corrected. "War is changing, my dear. It's no longer about territory. It's about biology. About control. I was just ahead of the curve." "You're under arrest," I said. "By whom?" Vance laughed. "Your unit is disbanded. You're fugitives. No one is coming to save you." In fact, he pressed a button on his desk. A siren wailed. Red lights flashed. "I've activated the self-destruct sequence. This bunker is rigged to blow. In 2 minutes. You can kill me, but you'll die with me. Or you can leave. Let me go, and you live." It was the ultimate test. The moral dilemma. Justice or survival. I looked at my team. Miller was terrified. Jax was stoic, but I saw the conflict in his eyes. Irina was furious. "If we let him go," I said, "he'll do it again. He'll find another way. If we stay," Miller said, "we die." I looked at Vance. He was arrogant, confident. He thought he had won. He thought human nature was predictable. Self-preservation above all. But he didn't know us. "Not really." "Jax," I said, "shoot the server rack." Jax didn't hesitate. He fired 3 rounds into the main computer bank behind Vance. Sparks flew. Screen shattered. "What are you doing?" Vance screamed. "That's the backup. That's my insurance." "Your insurance is gone," I said. "And so is your escape. The self-destruct is linked to the server. If the server is destroyed, the timer stops. But the exit seal, we're trapped." Vance's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I asked. "Check the doors." Vance ran to the door. It was locked, sealed tight. "You've killed us all," he whispered. "No," I said. "I've given us a chance." "Miller, can you override the seals?" Miller was already at a terminal. "I can try, but it'll take time." "How much time?" 10 minutes. "We have air for an hour," Jax said. "We wait." Vance slumped against the wall, defeated. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure fear. He was no longer a general. He was just a man, a coward. We sat in silence, watching him, watching the man who had betrayed everything we stood for unravel. After 10 minutes, Miller cheered. "Got it. Doors opening." We stood up. I walked over to Vance. He looked up at me, expecting mercy or vengeance. I didn't give him either. I handed him a pair of handcuffs. "You're coming with us," I said, "to face trial, to face the world." You don't get the easy way out, Vance. You don't get to die a martyr. You get to live with what you've done. Every day, for the rest of your life. We dragged him out of the bunker into the cold morning air. The snow was falling gently, covering the tracks of our struggle. As we walked back toward the city, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't over. The trials would be long. The healing would take years. But we had won, not with guns, but with truth, with courage, with a refusal to obey an unjust order. Miller hummed, "Take on me again, this time in tune." Jack smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Irina walked beside me, her head held high. I looked at the horizon, where the sun was breaking through the clouds. It was a new day, and for the first time in a long time, it looked bright. We were no longer just soldiers. We were guardians, and we were just getting started.